Let's watch.
I think that somebody has said, oh, the Supreme Court exercised the wisdom of Solomon. Somebody was quoted in that regard. I read the This Day report this morning, which is a very brilliant reportage, very comprehensive, very detailed, very much on point. Even if the CR, I don't think the CR has already released a certified true copy of those rulings in court yesterday. Now to the basic issues. In the case of ADC, the Supreme Court ruled that the appellate court erred, arrived at its ruling per incuriam, particularly by the preservatory order that it issued. In other words, to preserve the rest in the matter. And then to go on, it also erred, so said the unanimous decision read by Justice Garuba in that matter, to now say they must go back to the status quo ante bellum. Now, that has been a major source of controversy. So what the Supreme Court gave the ADC was a partial victory. And it was on the basis of that that the INEC went ahead and then listed the names of Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, Senator David Mark, and my former teacher. He was dean when I was studying law at Lagos State University. That's Professor Osereme Osumbo, who is the National Legal Advisor. So the INEC also showed good faith in that regard, that this is the latest development. However, the ADC, David Mark-led group, did not succeed in the other matter about the original case, I think in the Court of Justice Emeka Nwite, which had originally said that the matter, having come before the court by way of originating summon, that the David Mark-led group should show cause why the court should not, proceed against it, why it should remain the constitutional authority. Now the Supreme Court has said, go back to that Federal High Court. And that's where the problem is. And that's why I think that its celebration by the David Mark-led group is premature. There was a lot of celebration, everybody dancing and all of that. But in that regard, the Supreme Court upheld the position of the Federal High Court. So the matter is going to go back and start afresh. So why this celebration? And the question you ask is, what next for the David Mark-led group? The matter is further complicated by the fact that everybody is claiming victory with that Supreme Court ruling. Dumebi Kachiku says, oh, this is an affirmation that what was done originally was wrong, and his group is the right group. Nafiu Balagombe has also come up to say, no, people are misinterpreting this judgment of the Supreme Court, that in fact the Supreme Court was giving victory to him. But the matter now has been returned back to that Federal High Court for it to be determined. Now, what comes out of there is what will determine what is next for ADC, what is next for Atiku Abubakar and the other interested parties in the presidency, namely Mr. Peter Obi, namely Mr. Rotimi Amechi, namely Dr. Rabiu Kwankwanso, and all the parties involved. So it seems to me that they are jubilating rather prematurely. However, the ADC has set up a jubilation party, a dance party, and they've even added that they still want Professor Joash Amupiton to be removed, or for him to resign as the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Committee. They also have to deal with the ruling from the Court of Justice Joyce Abdulmalik, who said that the David Mark-led group, whatever it organizes, should not be recognized. There is also another case by, I mentioned his name yesterday, Doman, Mr. Doman, who took a case to the Federal High Court in the matter of, the constitutional authority of the David Mark-led group. That also, judgment has been given. That's the judgment of Justice Joyce Abdul Malik, right? So what next? Then what next with the other matter that some persons took to the court, and the Attorney General of the Federation also got involved in it, to the effect that certain political parties, ZLP, Accord Party, ADC, and 2 others, will have to be disqualified because they have not met the required threshold, constitutional requirement. So we ask the question, there's still a lot of uncertainty in terms of what the future of the ADC will be. Now we go very quickly to the People's Democratic Party. Now, People's Democratic Party, I think what should interest students of law is the fact that there was, this one was not unanimous. There was dissenting judgment, 3-2. Justice Mohammed Garuba delivered the lead judgment. And in that particular case, he was saying that the Turaki faction disobeyed the court, was forum shopping, and that when you disobey the court, the rule is that rules of court, decisions of court are supposed to be obeyed. You cannot forum shop, which is something that is very convenient, and that the Turaki faction was going to a court of coordinate jurisdiction to enable it after Justice Peter Lifo had ruled in the Sule Lamido case that convention in Ibadan, November 15, 16, could not go ahead. The majority ruled that, look, what you should have done is to say that we will appeal, but that the Turaki faction, Sheyi Makinde faction, did not appeal. They went ahead and had their convention and then came back to appeal. In other words, they were trying to manipulate the judicial process. And his lordship was very clear in that regard and in saying that, look, you cannot do that, and that the reliefs being sought by the Turaki faction, have been dismissed on the grounds of incompetence as determined by the appeal court in that matter. Both cases were, cases that came from the appeal court, of course. But I think it's also interesting to look at what the dissenting judges said. Justice Samani, I think, yes. Justice Samani and also Justice Stephen Ada. Now, they made a point that, yes, they agree with the majority decision that, okay, Ibadan Convention nullified, abuse of court process, disrespect for court process, and you cannot gain from disobeying the court of law. You can only go on appeal. But both of them pointed out that this is a matter of internal parties. That's the internal affairs of the parties. And, internal affairs of the party. And that, the same Supreme Court had decided severally that the court has no jurisdiction. This is where the issue of jurisdiction came up in the matter. And jurisdiction is a basic point. And it's a matter in a legal matter that can be raised at any point, either at the beginning or in the middle or at the end or after. And that the court, the majority erred by assuming jurisdiction over that matter, because they think that you cannot set aside internal issues. Justice Ada, I think, agreed with the process, the fact that, okay, you can't abuse court process. But he said that, look, that was not enough ground for the Supreme Court to say, the Supreme Court will just dismiss the matter. And then, of course,
Justice Umar,
Justice Ada, Stephen Ada, in the minority decision in PDP.
It was Justice Umar and Justice Samani that were in the minority.
No, there were two.
Okay.
The dissenting opinion was Justice Samani and also Justice Ada. And then Justice Samani, what he did was to fault his colleagues and said that further, the majority decision raised issues that were not raised by none of the parties in the matter, and that you cannot exercise jurisdiction in that matter. So it was a very robust, I think, ruling, and I think sometimes the minority decision may even be of more interest, than the majority decision. And I urge persons interested in the matter to read both the minority decisions of Justice Stephen Adda and Justice Sama. However, I raise the question again: what next for the PDP? The PDP had a meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, Justice Adda?
Yeah, Justice Sumar was in the dissent.
Justice Adda delivered the lead judgment.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you were trying to...
Yes, Justice
Okay,
Sumar
the other justice, it was Abubakar Umar.
Yes.
Justice Abubakar Umar. Okay. So I take that back and, just assign what I said about Justice Adda to Justice Abubakar Umar. But the question again, as I had raised with ADC, is what's next for PDP? The PDP is saying that their lawsuits in determining the PDP matter also dismissed the cross-appeal, because there was a cross-appeal by Anyanwu, or if you like, the Wike faction. And the substance of it is that in the Wike faction's matter, they were challenging this argument that, Anyanwu, no longer was expelled. That Anyanwu was expelled, Ajibade, SAN, and others were expelled. And the court dismissed that also. So on the basis of that, the PDP, when they met yesterday, now said there's no leadership. And that's why the BOT should take over. And Senator Adolphus Wabara, who is chairman of the Board of Trustees, is now saying that the party will look into the matter. The BOT is the second largest, highest organ of the party. Then NEC will be constituted. So the question is, what is next? For Wike himself, who had a conference or a press conference yesterday, saying that the Turaki faction no longer exists. What is next for Turaki himself? What is next for Senator Adolphus Wabara? And then for both parties, there's a question of time, because all of these matters are time-bound. INEC has said, okay, May 30, you submit a list of candidates. By August, the process will be in place. Can they meet all of these thresholds? So those who are jubilating should moderate their jubilation. And also, Nigerians should also see that the matter is not over. The battle is still ahead, either for APC or, PDP, and also the matter in which the Attorney General of the Federation is involved.